The day a stranger promised to save my family, I walked into his study and scared him just by existing. Stonebridge sat over the water, like old money breathing. My green dress felt like a dare, and my mother kept texting me, "This will save us. Be grateful, keep it simple." He turned from the window, sharp suit, tired eyes, the kind of posture that makes people speak in lower voices. He blinked like I was a trick of the light and said almost to himself, "You're going to complicate this." I stuck out my hand anyway, because if I didn't move, I'd drown. He shook it fast, like he'd touched a live wire, then did the pacing thing powerful men do when their plan meets an unexpected variable named Noel. He laid out the arrangement, like bullet points, 2 years separate quarters, shared meals, public events. I help him look settled for a merger. He pays off my mom's mortgage, my dad's medical debt, my little brother's tuition. There's a settlement at the end. No feelings, just business. I could hear Troy's voice in my head. My ex who measured my worth in how quiet I could be, and I decided I was done shrinking to fit a man's comfort. So I asked Caleb Mercer, the man people talk about like a stock ticker, why me, not the file, the person. He surprised me by asking about books, food colors, and when I said green sounds like hope, he stopped pacing, like maybe he'd felt that too once and forgot what it was called. I said yes with a ring that belonged to his grandmother. Not vulgar, just honest and old, and we moved fast. Planners, fittings, a guest house with glass and morning light. Mrs. Alvarez, the housekeeper, bringing coffee on a tray and telling him in Spanish to stop skipping lunch. Yeah, he understood every word. We found a rhythm, small, careful human. He'd leave a playlist on my counter like a secret handshake. I'd roast him for signing emails with periods like threats, you know what I mean. The day before the wedding, he walked me through the roses and down to the dock, dirt smudging the cuff of a $1,000 shirt, while he deadheaded a bloom without thinking. And when I told him my dad taught me to fix leaky faucets and open stuck doors with a flathead, and patience, he said, my father would have asked if he takes care of people or just employs them. He didn't flinch when I asked back. He told me about scholarships for his employees' kids and lunches in the warehouse so they could tell him what he'd missed. It didn't sound like a performance, it sounded like a confession from a man who doesn't expect absolution. We married under a sky so blue it felt suspicious. Strings, soft vows, the quick public kiss that somehow tilted the room, and then the handshakes with people who read markets like whether Victoria Armitage held my gaze for 2 beats and told Caleb he'd chosen well, which is a funny way to talk about a person. But I let it pass because I was trying not to sway in a dress that weighed more than my rent. After, on a quiet terrace, he took off his tie and admitted I planned everything up to this moment, and I don't know what comes next. I said we get coffee for real this time, and decide to be decent to each other. He asked if I wanted a honeymoon for appearances. I asked if he'd let himself enjoy one if we went. He looked surprised, like I'd found a door inside a wall he built. Pick a city, he said, anywhere. Florence, I blurted, because 16-year-old me had promised herself she'd meet Botticelli with her own eyes. On the plane, he worked exactly an hour, then shut the laptop like it had disrespected him, and asked about my paintings, not the result, the why. I told him I paint small things, people step past light on water corners of rooms. He listened like I'd given him coordinates. And in Florence, when our guide opened the Uffizi early, and I almost cried in front of a Botticelli. He almost cried, watching me almost cry. That's the moment right there when a guarded man's face forgets to be guarded. Over pasta, he said, you should teach, I laughed. He said it again, rent the space, I'll handle logistics, which is not a romantic line but sounded like one when he said it, because he meant it. That night on the balcony, the city soft and lemon-scented. I asked what makes you happy, and he looked genuinely lost, like I'd asked his favorite oxygen goals make sense. Happiness is dangerous, you can lose it. Then he exhaled like his ribs were tired and said the thing he'd been swallowing. Noelle, I think I'm falling in love with you. and I don't know how to keep my hands off the control panel. I told him I was already there, and when he kissed me, the rules we drew in neat little boxes blurred at the edges. Back home, we didn't rush the rest breakfasts on the terrace, me sketching, until the floor turned to honey, him working from the study. With the door open, which is its own kind of intimacy. He found a bright storefront downtown and said, "If you want it, it's yours," and when Victoria Armitage stopped by and watched a 9-year-old draw a boat, she told me I make complexity feel like permission. I felt taller for days. Then the fall came like it always does when everything is finally good. Jade, my best friend, brought cake and a grenade, Troy called. She said the ex, he thinks he made a mistake, and by the way, would you even look at Caleb if you didn't need help? I laughed, it sounded like glass. She said it was just a question, maybe a fair one, and I showed her out. But the question crawled under my skin and wouldn't stop scratching. For 4 days, I answered Caleb with weather reports. Fine, sure. Okay, when he brought peonies, I read calculation. When he asked about the kids at the studio, I heard PR, you know what I mean. Finally, he set down his fork and said, "Noel, talk to me, what changed?" "Do you love me?" I asked. "Yes," he said without blinking. "Do you love me or the way I make you look in rooms that matter?" The hurt across his face made me want to swallow my own words. "I loved you asleep on a plane with pencil on your cheek," he said. "I loved you arguing with a dock worker and then admitting he was right. I loved you before a single gala smile." And then he went quiet. "If you don't trust me, flowers can't fix that." He slept in the guest room. The house went cold like a conference room with the lights on. On the 3rd day, he knocked with a manila folder and his boardroom voice. "I want to give you a real choice," the amendment said. "If the marriage ended, I'd still keep everything. We agreed on my family's debts, my brother's tuition, the settlement, even if I walk." "Why?" I whispered. "Because money will never be the rope that keeps you here," he said. "And if I leave," I asked, he swallowed hard, "then I fail at being happy for you for a while and eventually I get better." He left me at the kitchen table with a pen heavy as a brick, and I did the only thing that ever makes sense when I can't hear my own mind. I painted all night, canvas after canvas, not the ring or the house or the rescue him. The way he stands at the window like he's listening for weather. The way he deadheads a rose without thinking. The way his voice changes when he talks to the kid, bussing tables, the man, not the money. Morning came pink and clean. I walked into the kitchen with paint on my wrist and said, "Jade brought noise, I let it in, that's on me." "Do you still want to leave?" he asked soft, like he already knew the answer and was bracing for a different one. "No," I said. "I want to choose you without the math." I told him every canvas was him, that I'd throw my phone in the lake before I let Troy rent space in my head again, that if we lived over a laundromat eating cereal for dinner, I'd still reach for his hand. In the dark, he closed his eyes, opened them bright with relief, tore the amendment in half and said, "I wanted to be brave first." "You were," I said. "You just did it with a pen." We moved my things into the main house in 20 quiet minutes, my books leaning on his, my brushes in a jar by the window, my shoes next to shoes that cost more than my first car. It looked wrong for 10 seconds, then it looked right. Life after that wasn't fireworks. It was the good ordinary coffee on the terrace, me teaching kids to breathe while they draw so their lines stop shaking him in the back row, with his tie loose like he'd been let out of a museum. A gallery night, where he introduced himself as Noel's husband and looked proud, saying at arguments that started fast and ended with "sorry," said out loud. Bad days where he stared too long at the window, and I taped a note to his laptop, "You're allowed to be happy bad days," where I forgot to eat. And he asked the same 3 questions in the same order. Did you eat? Did you drink water? Did you remember you're good at this? Months later, we walked the shoreline behind Stonebridge, wind talking in the hydrangeas. "Do you regret the way we started?" I asked. "Never. He pulled me in like he was claiming land, because it brought me to the version of myself that deserves you. Bold, I said, a little arrogant. Accurate, he said. And we both laughed, like people who finally stopped holding their breath. People still ask if a marriage that began as a contract can become love. I think the fine print decides it, not the paper kind, the human kind. Do you choose each other when no one's watching? Do you lift when the other person is tired? Do you stay curious when the story could coast? Do you tell the truth when it costs you your favorite defense mechanism? We don't always get it right, but we get up. That's the miracle. And a green dress that smelled like a dare. Yeah, that happened. So let me ask you, and be honest, if a deal could save your family, but might cost you your heart, would you sign? And if you did, would you let the story change you, or would you keep the walls up? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where you stand on security versus love, on contracts versus commitment, on the way class and power make people judge choices they've never had to make. And if you've lived something like this, I want to hear your version. You know what I mean?